For any content, information, or opinions expressed, user bears full responsibility for their reliance on such content, information, or opinions.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so glad that you could join us. It's the beginning of a new year, new information, new guests, everything new, and I'm sure you as a caregiver, you've got new issues, new challenges, and need new information. So this is the place for family caregivers, non-paid family caregivers who are caring for someone that really cannot take care of themselves any longer, especially people that have some form of dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's disease, a vascular dementia, a frontal temporal lobe, any kind of memory loss. This show was designed 7.5 years ago just for you. And so today we start off a new year with a new topic, and this is the time, the holidays, where families are coming together, they're traveling if they can with the airlines and the snow, but they're traveling to see loved ones. And sometimes they haven't seen loved ones for a fairly good amount of time for various reasons. A lot of people have retired to Florida, and their adult children and extended family may still live up north. And so it's the great time to be visiting and checking in on your loved ones. But it also can be a hard time, especially if you haven't seen them for a while and things may have changed. And sometimes you visit, especially if they're maybe even living in an assisted living or an independent living or even in a nursing home, and you notice things are different and you're not sure like what you should talk about, how you should talk about it, what you should say, what you shouldn't say, and it can be a little uncomfortable, even though you've known this person your whole life, because the disease, the dementia has changed things, and that's going to change things for everyone. But today we have an expert in the field. She is someone who has been helping families for 7.5 years, specifically as a elder care consultant, and she's with us today, and we're going to touch on a lot of these topics about visiting families during the holidays, helping you determine all of those do's and don'ts, and then further on in the show we're going to be talking about how do you know when it might be time for a loved one to have additional care, and how do you go about to find that. So I'm happy today to introduce to you Jody Glaser. Hi Jody, welcome to the show.
Hi Marcia, thanks so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited you are here, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
And Jody is, like I said, she's an elder care consultant. The company is called Senior Care Authority.
That's correct.
All right, and I'm going to let you tell everybody what Senior Care Authority is and what it does.
Okay. Well, Senior Care Authority is a national franchise made up of elder care consultants and assisted living advisors. And what we do is we help families to find long-term care options for their loved ones and make it as easy as possible. It's definitely a difficult time, as you know, but having somebody there alongside you to guide you is what we do.
Wonderful. Now, Senior Care Authority, I know you're here in South Florida.
Yes.
And you have a certain territory, is that right?
Yes.
And what territory do you cover?
I personally am in South Florida. We cover Coral Springs through Jupiter, so it's North Broward and all of Palm Beach County. But there are people that are to the south of me, to the north of me, all over Florida, and we're all over the United States. So there's about 80 franchises around the country. So no matter where you need help, there's somebody from Senior Care Authority that can help you.
That's wonderful. So it's a national company.
It's a national company.
That's
right.
great. That's great. So if you're listening and you're not from South Florida and you like a lot of the things we're talking about, you might want to check and see if in your area, in your state, you have the same Senior Care Authority with wonderful people like Jody that can help you too. So we're going to be talking about a lot of things today, Jody. And I mentioned that the holiday time is such a busy time, and people are coming together, and it's really hard sometimes when you see a family member change, especially when they have, their physical body has changed, their personality has changed.
Right.
A lot of things have changed, and it's harder to deal with. And I know that you've been helping families for a long time, and you've seen this.
Oh, yeah.
And you counsel as a consultant. You also counsel people, especially when you're going to meet with them and talk to them about their situation. So let's talk about a few things when families come to visit of what they should maybe expect or what they should do to make that visit easier for the person that they're visiting and not so uncomfortable for them.
Right.
So you have some tips regarding that?
Yeah, especially tips having to do with dementia and visiting folks that you haven't seen in a long time that do have that and are living with that disease. So people do progress over time, as we all know. And so it might be a little bit startling to see people that you haven't seen in a while. They might not be remembering everything about you. They might not recognize you. And then people, as they get older, their stature changes, especially if they're using walkers or canes. People might be more hunched over than they used to be. People get to be a little bit more frail, so they lose muscle tone. So people might look a little bit different. When you're setting up a meeting to see somebody, a visit, it's best to only bring maybe 1 or 2 people at a time.
Not the whole
Don't bring the whole family.
the whole family with all the cousins and
No.
grandkids. No, that's
And probably don't pick up that loved one to go bring them back to a party if you haven't seen them.
okay. Why
Definitely
is
not.
that?
So people with dementia have problems with sensory, and they might not be able to see as well because they're focusing on maybe too far low or too far high, and they don't really necessarily see what's happening right in front of them. So that is something that is a big deal. Also, when you have a lot going on, it's confusing to somebody. So having a lot that's movement, that's going to be a little bit
Too much commotion,
Oh yeah. too
right?
much,
So you're
yes.
saying if all the family come and they're excited, they want to see
Yeah.
grandma and great grandma, and they're excited, but they tend to all come in and kind of gather around and almost pounce on
Yeah.
her, and they love her to death,
Right.
and they mean well, but sometimes grandma is going to take aback to all of
Yeah.
that because she's frightened, overwhelmed, right?
Yes,
Scared.
right.
And I've even seen where families will gather and they'll be behind
Oh yeah.
the person, right?
Not good. That's going to scare somebody.
Right,
definitely.
and they're talking from behind, and the person who has some memory loss, who's older, they either can't hear them because they're
That's right.
behind, right? Or they can't see them, and it really does frighten them. I mean, it would frighten us if someone just came up from behind and started talking, we don't know who it is. And so these are things that people don't realize.
Right.
They're in the moment, they're happy
Yeah.
to be visiting. And that's very, very important to do. So limit it to a few, 2 or 3 maybe?
I'm going to suggest 1 or 2 people. If
Okay.
you want to bring 3 people in, that's, you can, but I would say 1 or 2 people. Also, something like lighting is going to be like if they're not used to, if they have their places dimly lit and then you start turning all the lights on, that's probably not good. So I would say make sure that when you come that you have a time that you're going to be visiting them, that it's not during their normal nap or their favorite TV show or during a meal, because that's going to go ahead and be disruptive right there.
Those are very good points because they're going to be annoyed at you if you're trying to interrupt their dinner they've been looking
Right.
forward to all day, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So definitely decide when you're going to be coming, bringing your 1 or 2 people, coming in, being quiet, and reminding that person who you are. So say, "Hi, Mom, it's Susan. Nice to see you." You know, something like that, just in case they forget who you are and they might be looking at you blankly, not necessarily sure who it is that's talking to them.
Right, and they might even say, "Who are you?" Or they might call you by a different name, right? And what is one of the things that, bless their heart, they say it, they don't understand what they're doing, but they'll say, "Mom, don't you remember me? I'm not Susan, I'm
Yeah.
Sally," right? And they kind of push that point. What's that going to do to a person who gets confused and can't remember and doesn't realize what's going on?
Yeah, it's going to be embarrassing for them. They're going to feel uncomfortable and a little humiliated. So really letting them know who you are is very important. Looking in their eyes, talking slowly to them. Now, you don't want to talk to them like they're a child. You want to talk to them like they're an adult, but keeping the conversation light and in small bites, and giving people the opportunity to answer you. It might take them longer to answer you, but give them that space to be able to do
Be
that.
patient. Yeah, it's hard to be patient sometimes.
Yeah.
People want to step in and speak for them or
Right.
put words, in their mouth for them, and that's another thing that can frustrate them, right? So there are a lot of things to be aware of, and you mentioned the surroundings. I want to touch on this. Don't take grandma or mom or whoever it is home to a big party.
No.
What is the negative of doing that?
Well, they're going to be very overwhelmed, and they might shut down. You don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, everybody reacts differently. I just think that it's going to be a bad idea. They're not going to be comfortable at all. It's going to be a lot of commotion going on. So I'd say that probably coming to them, meeting them on their terms is very important. Also, when you do ask questions, try and ask questions about things that happened in the past, like from their childhood or their youth. People often tend to remember things from long-term memory and not necessarily what happened last week or this morning. So
Good
keeping
point.
that in mind.
Yes, because they will get embarrassed if they don't know what to say because they can't remember. And sometimes they even make up stories which you know aren't going to be
Right.
true, and then that causes a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Well, these are really good tips, Jody. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, we're going to talk more to Jody Glaser from Senior Care Authority about lots more of do's and don'ts of visiting and a lot more when we come back. So stay tuned.
Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
My guest today is Jody Glaser. She's an elder care consultant with Senior Care Authority. And thank you again, Jody, for being here. We're talking about tips when we're visiting our relatives, especially over the holidays or really any time, because you might want to go visit on a special birthday, a big occasion where there's a lot of people involved. And there are things to do and don't and little tips to visiting that if you know it and the person has some memory loss and they've changed a little bit, those tips are going to make your visit
Absolutely.
a lot better, right?
Yeah.
So you were talking about all of this, and I'm just curious. You've been doing this about almost 8 years. How and why did you decide to make a switch in your careers
Yeah.
and get in this type of industry?
So my background is consulting, and so I'm still a consultant, but it's for a different type of person that I'm consulting for. I'm a really good girlfriend to my friends, and that kind of helped me to decide to do this because I listen and I'm happy to guide people and educate them. So that's really what I do a lot of. I listen to what's going on. I ask people, you know, where are you now? What's going on with your parents? How do you see this in the future? What would you like and what are you expecting? And then I help them to get to that place.
Wow.
And
That is a good friend. So that you're the go-to person.
yeah, and I've educated myself over the years, and I'm a certified senior advisor and a certified dementia practitioner. So, and I've done a lot of reading, and I've gone to speaking engagements to listen to people. In the franchise, they educate us on a regular basis too. So doing that is very important to me. I want to be able to give people the best tips, the best information, and to educate them so that they really understand the process and make it comfortable for them. The reason why I did it was because I do like to help people, and I wanted to be able to help people more than I was helping people in the corporate world. And in South Florida, there is a big population of people that are seniors that are here. And so I felt like it would be something that people could use here. So that was important to me as well. And I could see myself doing it. I really could see myself helping people, listening, and becoming an expert in this field.
Well, you obviously are successful at it. I know you've been doing it for 7, almost 8 years, and have helped so many people to get what they need. So you listen and find the solution. And so that is a wonderful career change and very much needed. So that being said, and you doing what you do, you know, there are people out there that when they do visit family and they haven't seen them for a while, they notice these changes, right? And they might think, you know, I wonder if mom or dad or Annie, whoever it might be, is needing extra care, needing some help. Maybe they can't live in their home anymore. They need to get, you know, more socialization, more stimulation, more medical care even. But just thinking about all of that to someone who really isn't in our industry, it can be overwhelming.
Right.
So what are some of the benefits to families to use an elder care consultant like you?
So I know hundreds of people in the senior care arena. So I focus mostly on assisted living, moving to assisted living, memory care, independent living, or residential care homes. But if you come to me and you have other issues, I'm able to direct you to the right person. And I'm familiar with those issues. Being a certified senior advisor means that I understand the issues of our elders and know a little bit about it so that I can say, oh, you need this kind of person, and then I can make those introductions for you. Another reason why you'd want to work with somebody like me is that we've already been to all of the assisted living communities, all of the independent living communities, all the residential care homes and the memory care homes. So you can tell us exactly what you're looking for, the area that you want your loved one to live in, what kind of nuances, what their issues are health-wise, what they want in a new home, in their apartment, if they need a swimming pool, or they need to be able to work out in a gym, or they want to be able to walk the area, walk around and have a more of an urban type of, where there's, you know, trees and you know, there's outdoor settings. So you can say to someone like me what exactly is the most important thing to your loved one, and I can go ahead and say, okay, well, these 3 communities are the best fit for that. And then somebody like me can go ahead and call up the communities. I know all the salespeople at the communities, and I can easily get an appointment for you. It's not always easy to get appointments with people. I know their cell phone numbers, and they answer me when I call because they know that I'm going to be bringing them somebody who is interested in their community and that I already know it's a very good fit.
So if I hear what you're saying, by having you help a family, you actually can narrow down the choices.
Absolutely. I can narrow down the choices to fit with, and also your budget. I can go ahead and make sure that it fits within your budget, because I'm not going to bring you to places that don't fit. Because, you know, I work with all these communities really closely, and I actually have all that information in a database, and I'm in and out of them on a regular basis. I also know inside knowledge, so maybe a community has had some changes and they're not such great changes. Or people have come to me recently and said, Jody, I need to move my mom out of XYZ community because this is going on. Well, I'm not going to be moving people back into XY community that soon because they told me about all these issues. So I really do know the inside scoop on the communities.
Which is very valuable, really. And so it narrows down the choices, and it saves families a lot of time.
It saves a lot of time. I mean, if you have 40, 50, 60 hours to go see a bunch of communities and take notes, ask a lot of questions, I mean, you could do it yourself, but why? I mean, somebody like me doesn't charge for having, you can have me help you and I don't charge you for that. The community pays me my fee, and they don't have as many outside salespeople as they probably need to, so they rely on people like us to bring people to them.
Very good. Well, thank you. So glad that you joined the industry, and I've known you the whole time that you've been in business,
I met you early on.
and we have worked together. So I'm just really happy that you could be here tonight. So let's go back to a couple other visiting family and do's and don'ts, because I think these are realistic tips, something that families can really take and use, that maybe they haven't thought about these things before.
Right.
So what else would you say to families when visiting someone, and as far as a do or don't?
So another do is, you know, people who are having dementia, they don't have their family around all the time, they really crave touch and having somebody warm around them. So when you're talking to them, feel comfortable putting your hand on their hand, maybe putting your arm on their shoulder, giving them a hug. Things like that are important to the people.
Yeah,
that
physical
you're visiting.
touch is, yeah, absolutely. Don't be afraid, but
Don't be afraid.
but don't do it abruptly, like you said,
Slow.
slow.
Be slow, be gentle, let them know that you're coming towards them. So you don't want to surprise them. That's really very important. And then when people repeat, so that's a big tell sign of dementia. And there are a lot of different dementias, but that seems to be something that's prevalent in all of them. So if they ask you the same question, just go ahead and answer the question again. Don't mention anything about that they just asked you that question. Just let them ask you again, and ask as though it's the first time you heard it.
And then maybe change the subject.
You can ask another question, but they ask you that question again, just act like you had never heard it before.
Good tip. Yeah. People don't remember that they just asked that
They
question.
don't remember that they just asked that question. They really don't. I mean, I was out with a family and we had lunch together, and it took a long time for the wait staff to come back. And so he asked us, did we order lunch already? And she said, yes, we did. And he said, oh, great, what did I order? And we told him, and he said, that sounds like a great choice that I made. So he was okay with it, we were okay with it, it just made it easy.
Yeah, that's very, very, very important. A lot of families, you know, they love their person they're coming to see, but they don't understand these changes.
Right.
And then families also might visit someone in the home and might be appalled at what they might see. And I know you've dealt with this before. If a family's going to visit someone at home, maybe they haven't been there for a while, what are some of the things that they could see that might surprise them?
Yeah. So maybe items are in a different place than they used to be. So if you're meeting somebody at their home, they might have changed things up because they just can't really remember where to put things. So that's something. People also who are having problems with dementia might start a pile, and then they might move that pile to another place, and they might move it to somewhere else. And that is kind of a lack of control that they're feeling, and so they want to be in control of something. So they'll gather things up and they'll move them, and then they might move them somewhere else. In their closet, things might be a little bit different. Maybe if someone's not helping them out, you might see shoes being paired differently, things like that. Some things that might be negative that you want to look out for, if someone's not being watched out for, you might want to check the refrigerator and make sure that there aren't items in there that have been there for many, many weeks. That are
Spoiled
molding.
food.
Yes, spoiled food is a big thing.
Because a person with memory loss dementia might not even think about checking for that. They might not even realize that it's spoiled and they could eat it and
Right.
get sick, right?
Yeah.
And end up in the emergency room.
That's a big thing. You might want to look in their cupboards too to see if there are items that look like they're moldy and that haven't been touched in a long time.
And even if there's sufficient food, too, because I know that sometimes there's horror stories, which is not good, but there are, and it does happen. And you know, and I think one reason it happens, and I know you know this, but people with dementia can make things up. And so if you say, Mom, do you have food, or what did you have for lunch today? And you're on the phone,
Right.
that she can answer you, oh, I had a
Yeah.
ham and cheese, and oh, and we went shopping and all this, but you don't know it's true
Right.
because they can make up stories.
Yeah.
And they're not really lying, it's just that they don't remember, so they
Right.
are telling you what they think you want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to be careful for that. You also want to know if, I mean, are they safe enough to even be at home alone? Do you notice that maybe pots have been burnt on the bottom? Have you heard about stories about them being locked out of the house? You might want to check in with the neighbors to see, are they knocking on the doors of the neighbors and asking for help? That's kind of important too. You don't want somebody who is having problems with memory driving also. That could be a real issue. People get lost. That's a real big problem that you might
And
not
they
hear
can
about.
hurt other people.
Oh yeah.
Accidentally. Their reflexes aren't as good as they used to be.
Right.
And sometimes they don't even realize that the traffic light changed from green to red. It doesn't compute in their head.
Right.
And they just go flying on through, and then that turns out to be a disaster. So
Yeah.
that's one of the hardest things, though, that families don't like to address that subject of taking those car keys away.
Yeah, that's something that we deal with at Senior Care Authority.
Do
a
you?
lot. Oh yes, yeah. We have something that we do where we'll actually go ahead and do a one-on-one with the family, the person who is having problems with dementia, and have a 2-hour conversation with them and talk to them about their first vacation and their first car. We will ask them questions. We might do some pen and paper activities with them, like ask them to draw what does a clock look like when it's at 8 o'clock. And we might have them go through a little maze with a pen and paper. And after we have this conversation with them for 2 hours, we'll bring the loved one in that asked us to come in, and we'll talk about everything that we heard. And we ask people to retire from driving. We just ask them that.
Because you're showing them the results of the little activities that were not so great,
Right.
showing that their comprehension is lacking. Is that what you're going for?
Yes, and the questions and the answers, if they're having problems with answering the questions, we're recording what they're writing, what they're telling us, and then we can go ahead and review it again with the family member. And we ask the family member to come in with a solution. So what's going to happen? Are you going to use Uber? There is Uber now, by the way, that you can just use it on the phone as opposed to using an app. So you can actually call up on the phone. You can go ahead and decide, well, we're going to go in and have a limo or somebody, a driving service, come and pick you up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Or maybe the family member is going to come over and be at their disposal for certain days of the week. Or maybe they'll move into independent living.
Well, you know, I like the whole premise of, you know, sharing the information, but you're just not saying you can't drive anymore. You're giving alternatives.
You have
And I
to come
think
with a
that's the
solve,
key,
yes.
right? You got to have the solutions. You can't just take away the keys and that's it. There have to be other things that will work and a solution and something that they can even look forward to.
Yeah, come up with a solid solution that you're going to be going and talking to your loved one about at that time.
Absolutely. Good stuff,
Yeah.
Jody. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to be giving away a free book for caregiving. So have a pen and paper ready. You'll want to write down how to get that. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment.
Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, and at this time, I'd like to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts is a member of the ProMedica family, a nonprofit, and they are there for you, the caregiver, if you need help caring for someone with dementia. Arden Courts has over 50 memory care assisted livings throughout the United States, and there are 10 right here in Florida where I am. One of the things that Arden Courts loves to do is to help the caregivers all along the journey of caregiving. And this book is free to any caregiver watching this show or listening to us on the radio that you would be very happy to have, because this book is called Untangling Alzheimer's. It's written by Dr. Tam Cummings, and it's a wonderful resource for caregivers. The book talks in layman's terms. What is dementia, the different kinds of dementia, what are some of the things that I should look out for. A lot of it is similar to what Jody and I tonight have been talking about, but it's right here, all in a book just for you, and it's free just for the asking. All you have to do to get this book is send an email, and that email address is delray@arden-courts.com. That's DELRAY at Arden, ARDEN-courts, COURTS.com. So send an email with your name, address, telephone number, and say that you saw the free offer for the Untangling Alzheimer's book on the Caregiver Solutions info show, and they will be very happy to send one straight to you. It's a great resource. If you don't have this book, I highly recommend it. So get that email sent. In the meantime, my guest is Jody Glaser. We're talking about all things on caregiving and tips for families on how to visit with loved ones, how to know what to say, when to say, how to say it, and some do's and don'ts, right?
Yes.
Which is very, very helpful. These are great tips for family members to know. And so a few more I know you have up your sleeve there we
Yes.
want to talk about. Try not to what? So you have some
Yeah.
try not tos. I know, and,
Right.
and I think you say try not to because sometimes it's hard,
It's hard.
not to, right?
Yeah, let me go with the biggest one. So try not to argue. Don't argue with your loved one. If they say that something is green but it's really blue, just call it green. Because in their world it really is blue or green, whichever.
Whatever they say it
Whatever
is.
they say it is, it is. And so just kind of go along with whatever they have to say. There's no real reason. You're having a visit. You don't see them all the time. Try not to argue.
Yeah, you don't want to argue about a color when you haven't seen your loved one in a year, right? So try not to argue. And, you know, if you do happen to say, no, Mom, it's not green, it's red,
Yeah.
what's that going to do?
It's going to make them feel defensive and upset. It's, you know, in their world, it's really, you know, it's red or green, whatever they say it is that color. So it just is not a good, you know, way to spend the time that you have with your mom or dad
Yeah,
at that time.
don't argue, but don't try to correct someone because
Don't
that
correct
will
them.
start an argument, right?
Yeah, don't correct them. I mean, whatever they say, and if they have an encounter that they're telling you a story and it was something that they thought that happened a long time ago, it's not worth correcting them. It's just not going to be a good outcome.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to. I mean, this is the way that they see things. And I mean, in the beginning, it was a little bit different for me to understand this. But now, you know, and if somebody asks me the same question over again, I really act as though I've never heard the question before and just go from there. And it just makes it easier.
But it's so hard for some families. No, that's not how it happened. I remember
Yeah,
it
well.
this way. And they just have this really innate urge to to make it right, and that's probably one of the hardest things to learn, is when you're talking and communicating with someone that, you know, it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to always be right, and you're going to have to get more in their world.
It doesn't
right?
matter. Go in their world.
And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
In the big picture, what does it really matter?
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
That's a biggie. You know, try not to argue. Any other try not tos?
Yeah, so, you know, try not to make them feel bad about anything. There's certainly no reason to do anything like that, too. I guess that's kind of along the same lines. Also, when people are speaking, try not to talk for them. It's so tempting to want to talk for them or to fill in the blanks for them when they're struggling. Just give them the time to say what they need to say.
I have a perfect example of that. Family was visiting, and the father had aphasia. He couldn't speak very well. Well, and really his words didn't even sound like words. It sounded gibberish, right? But he was so adamant about wanting to tell the daughter the story, but it made no sense, and the daughter was herself getting a little frustrated. Dad, you know, what are you trying to say? You're not making any sense. I don't know what you mean. And then he became frustrated because she's interrupting him.
Right.
She's not listening to him. I happened to come along and see the dynamics that was happening here between them. And so I just kind of calmed him down a little bit, and I said, George, you know, tell me, what is it? What do you need? And he went on in his gibberish, and I just nodded my head and, you know, and listened to him.
Yes.
And he just wanted to vent or express himself, and maybe in his mind he knew what he was saying, but it didn't come out that way at all. But the fact that we listened, that we were calm and took the time and listened, and after that he was perfectly fine.
Yeah, you need to prepare yourself when you're going in. You got to decide, I'm going to listen to this as though I was listening to a young child. And you don't want to talk down to them. It's just the same patience that you bring to a 4-year-old that maybe is having a hard time with their words and making sense. You got to come in with that. I mean, you know, say a little prayer, do some deep breathing. I mean, really, it's just going to make a better visit when you're talking to them.
Wonderful. Very, very good. So we've been talking a lot about visiting, do's and don'ts, try not to this and that. And sometimes it just gets to the point where a family decides this isn't working anymore, what the current situation is. So they know it's time for more. And then that's when they'll call someone like you, maybe a senior care authority franchise where they live, and say, hey, can you help me with this, right? So they make the phone call, and and you know, they might not understand how this whole thing works. So can you walk us through a step-by-step, once a family reaches out and says, I think we need help, what happens next?
So me or somebody like me, they're gonna ask you a lot of questions. So we're gonna wanna know all about your loved one and the situation that they're in now, and find out a little bit more about, you know, how you see them being. So, and there are lots of answers. There's not just one answer to long-term care. There's daycare, where maybe you want to keep your loved one at home, but you need a break during the day. And so you might have them go during the day to a daycare scenario where they specialize in working with people who have dementia. And they have they'll pick them up by bus. And they bring your loved one in, and they have breakfast and they have lunch, they have activities, they bring in entertainment. And so
it's fun.
It's fun.
Yeah,
And they spend the whole day.
It's like a summer camp for people that have dementia, and they're adults, but it's really fun, and they're safe in a safe environment.
It's a safe environment. And then they put them back on the bus, and then you're there at home to pick them up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's a scenario. Maybe you want to have someone come in and have home care come in, or somebody who specializes in working with people with dementia, spending a few hours a day with your loved one. A lot of it is, as a caregiver, you want to be able to give yourself a break, and you don't want to be on 24/7. It's exhausting, and then if you're not in a good situation and you're not healthy and you're not having a life, then how can you be a good caregiver? So I know you've probably talked a lot about that in the show.
But you know what? You can't stress it enough. And I'm glad you brought it up, because you know, this might be the first show that someone has ever seen and they've never heard that advice before. So
Yeah.
we just want to reiterate all the time, caregivers take care of yourself so you'll be in better shape to take care of someone else. And that's true.
There's also assisted living and there's also memory care. And people ask me, what's the difference between the two? And I say, if your loved one is left at home alone, would they wander outside and get lost? Are they burning things on the stove a lot? Are they getting locked out? Those are kind of things that the answers are yes, then maybe memory care is going to be a better fit than assisted living. Assisted living assumes that that person's going to understand, oh, it's breakfast, it's time to get up and get dressed and go to breakfast. Now, if they need help getting dressed, a caregiver comes in and helps them, but if they need help remembering that it's breakfast, maybe that's memory care.
And I just want to make a clarification for people, because I do get that question a lot too, but it's what I would call regular assisted living versus memory care assisted living.
That's right.
Because there's memory care assisted living, but there's also memory care in a nursing home. And so a lot of people, and I know you get this too, they assume if you need memory care, you automatically have to go to a nursing home.
Oh, no.
And that's not true,
Right.
because now there are a lot of wonderful places
Oh, yeah.
to go. Places that you and I, we have worked together.
Including Art and Courts, which you know I love Art and Courts. I mean, it is one of my go-to places for memory care. You know, it just depends on the type of person that we're talking to and what kind of care they need. Sometimes also, if people are active and they still want to have fun and they can engage, someplace like Art and Courts is a really great place for them to go to.
Well, you know I'm going to agree with that. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. 21 years with the company, and you know, that's why I like working with you. You understand
I do.
about dementia. You understand what families go through.
Yeah.
We do it. We've been doing it for 30 years, and so it makes a great team to help families, because that's what
Yes.
it's all about. It's about
right.
helping the family and giving families peace of mind, and helping that person with the memory loss to have a better quality of life.
Absolutely.
Right? That's
Yeah.
what the goal is. Better
Right.
quality of life and peace of mind for the family. And you know, there are so many people out there that can help you achieve that.
Absolutely.
And people that Jody, like she said, can refer you to if you need a different kind of expert.
Right.
You might need an elder law attorney, and
Right.
she knows elder law
Yes.
attorneys. And so it's really good to get connected. And
Yeah.
I think this is one of the things that, you know, stressing to caregivers is get your team and get a
Yeah.
person that really understands what's going
Right.
on and what you need, so they can refer you to those other things, right?
Right.
So you talked about regular assisted living versus memory care
Right.
assisted living. And then, of course, the next level beyond that would be a nursing home.
Well, we have also in between that is residential care homes. Residential care homes are usually 6 or 7 people live in a house with 1 or 2 caregivers. Usually it's 2 caregivers during the day and 1 person at night. What's really great about that is maybe somebody can't handle a lot of activities going on, or they're just too sick to enjoy the activities. Here, you're in a house. They'll gather people up and bring them in for meals. They'll bring them in to play cards. They'll bring them in for activities. People will come from outside for entertainment, and they're getting a lot of one-on-one. So if you're worried about your loved one being left in memory care all day and they're really not enjoying the activities, maybe something like that is the next step before a nursing home.
Well, that's where you come in too, because a lot of families don't know all these options. You do.
Right.
Also, they don't know the differences between one and the other.
Right.
And it really depends on fitting the place to your person, and
Right.
it's really about fitting it together.
That's right.
Because no one size fits all.
Oh, absolutely. Communities are like personalities of people. So somebody like me, you're asking what the process is. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. We're going to talk about the different options that are available and which are the ones that best fit your loved one.
Right.
So that's a really big part of what I do. And then I'm going to go ahead and arrange tours for whatever we decide upon. So, and that's something that's very easy for me to do. Like I said, I have the cell phone numbers of the people that work in the communities, and they know that I'm bringing them families that are well qualified for that specific scenario, and I can call them up and make those appointments very easily.
When you go on a tour and that family is accompanied by a representative from your company, how hard is it for a family to get all the information that they need because they might not know what questions to ask?
So I am going to be going with you, and I'm going to be making sure that the questions that are the hot questions for you that are very important to you and your loved one are being asked. More than likely, the salespeople are very well versed in their community, and they're going to do a good job of explaining what the community is and what it's like. But they're not going to know what the real important questions are. So if they're not covered, and maybe it's the first time you've been to on a tour, you're nervous, you don't ask the question, I'm going to know that that question is there. That's something that's important to you.
You're going to
and I'm
bring
gonna
it
ask
up.
That question
Yeah.
for you. I'm going to make sure that you get all the answers that you need from each of the communities.
Yeah, and that's really helpful too, because families don't really know all the questions that are needed to get enough information and the right information to make an educated decision. That's really important. So we get to take another quick break, but don't go away. We'll be right back. More from Jody Glaser, Senior Care Authority. Stay tuned.
Arden Court's Memory Care Community has the expertise and experience to simplify and enhance your loved one's life and to protect you, finding the peace of mind you deserve. Come, see the difference in a facility like Arden Courts that is 100% dedicated to Alzheimer's and dementia care can have on your loved one. Call us at 888-478-2410 or visit our website, arden-courts.com. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. We have a few minutes left with my special guest, Jody Glaser with Senior Care Authority. Jody, thank you for all the tips, all the do's and don'ts. There was one thing that you mentioned that I want to touch on, and it's about changing roles.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So let's say you're the loved one of a person, and you are either the daughter or the son or the wife or the husband or the uncle or the aunt. And then as that person progresses and you're taking more care of them, you're no longer that person. So let's say you're talking to your father and you're the daughter, and this happened with me and my dad, and you start to take care of them, and now you're the caregiver, and you're not the daughter anymore. And it's awkward for everybody. It's just not a normal role to be in. And so by bringing in outside help, whether it be a caregiver, daycare, moving them to assisted living, now you can slip right back into your role, and now you can relax and be the daughter to your father and or the wife to your husband, and it's just a much better scenario.
It is. It makes it more natural for
Right.
everybody, and,
That's right.
and gives you takes a lot of the responsibility and
Yes.
stress off of the shoulders. Let some professionals help you, and then take back your role
That's
as a
right.
family member.
That's right.
Yeah, that's really good. So I know we've talked a lot about a lot of things,
Yes.
and I want to give you a chance to let everybody know if they like something they heard, if they'd like to contact you, if they need more information, can they do that, and how?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can call me directly. I'm Jody Glaser with Senior Care Authority. You can call my phone number. It's 561-303-2242. It doesn't matter where in the country you are. I'll listen to your story and what's going on, and then I can make introductions for you in your area.
Great, and you do have a website, and I'll share that with everyone. It's www.seniorcareauthority.com/SouthFL for Florida /
Right.
All right, so if you want to get specifically to Jody and her information, then it would be seniorcareauthority.com/SouthFL/.
That's me.
Yeah, and they'll get to her. So we have just a few minutes left, and this has been great.
Thank you.
But I know you probably have a few more little tips, so we can
Yeah.
we can end on some more tips to help everyone and help make it a better year this year
Yeah.
than it was last in their caregiving journey.
And visiting. So when you're visiting your loved one and you have more than one person in the room, you don't want to go ahead and talk about that person like they're not in the room. You know, you don't want to do that anyway, right? It seems though like if someone has dementia, like it's okay to do something like that, but it's really not okay to do something like that. People with dementia, you know, they go in and they go out, and you don't want to catch them while they're
In a lucid moment.
In a lucid moment. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's perfect.
Yeah. And you're talking about them in front of them. It's just, well, it's rude, first of all. We wouldn't like it if someone
No.
did that to us. And I think sometimes people don't realize that they can understand quite a bit. And they can understand tonality, and they can understand body language.
Oh, yeah.
And they pick up on vibes. I mean, if you're a caregiver for someone and you're pretty close to them as far as knowing them and they knowing you, and you're all stressed out, they're going to be stressed out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, they pick up on that very, very easily. So you don't want to do that. You know, you want to, if you're going to be talking to someone about them, you know, have them in another room or go without them.
Right.
And then the other thing I think that goes along with that is if you make a decision to maybe move someone from their home, don't tell them too far in advance, because it's going to make them very anxious.
Yeah, people recommend to me they ask me, and so this is what I say to people is I wouldn't really tell them until that day that you're moving them. And actually, I wouldn't even talk about it until you're like walking out the door, seriously, because there's no real reason. You know, you have to remember that your loved one has dementia and that they're not thinking clearly, and it's the disease, and there's nothing anyone can do about that. So it's just best to not talk about it with them. And then if you feel comfortable, you can make up a story, and you can say, we need to go ahead and tear the carpet up in your house, so we're going to have you move for a little while into this hotel, and we want to go ahead and we're bringing your furniture with you so you're more comfortable. And people who with dementia have a real hard problem with time, and so after a couple weeks, they're not going to realize how long they've been somewhere.
Yeah. I had a lady that came and she thought she was there until her plumbing got fixed, and as soon as it got fixed, she was going to go back home. And another family said, oh, I really, identify with that lady. My mom is like her. That's great, but the lady said she's leaving when her plumbing's fixed.
Right.
And I looked at the man and I said, she's been here 9 months. He goes, 9 months?
Right.
I said, she doesn't remember how
Right.
long she's been
That's
here, but
right.
she hangs on
Yeah.
to the story because that makes her feel good. And that
Yeah.
makes her feel like she has more control, like you said. They like to have control, that
Right.
she knows what's going to happen. And in the meantime, she's having a ball.
That's right.
And
That's right.
she's acclimated and having a ball. So
Yeah.
that's a really good point that you mentioned is don't tell them how long something's going to be. You said
no.
a little while, which is
Yes.
great. You don't want to say for a week, because I've literally seen people with a calendar marking off
Oh,
days.
really?
Mhm.
Yeah, not
Because
good.
they're smart enough to every day mark off, and then they go, well, you said I'm only going to be here a week.
That's right.
And you lied to me. And then that's another whole
Yeah.
argument that goes on. But these are things that we like to share with you. I thank you so much, Jody, for being here
thank you
and
for having me.
sharing with us. Call Jody if you have any of the issues we've talked about today. She'd be happy to help you or refer you to someone who can help you. And don't forget about getting your free book, The Untangling Alzheimer's by Dr. Tam Cummings. It's free for the asking. Just send an email to delray@arden-courts.com with your name, address, telephone number, requesting this free book, and they'll get it out to you very, very shortly. We will be back next week. We do have new time starting the new year. We are starting now at 7 p.m. Eastern time, so it's 1 hour later. So if you miss us, just tell everybody it's 7 instead of 6. New time, new year. Things are, changing up.
Things change.
Things change. So we will be joining you every Tuesday still at 7 to 8 p.m. on the website caregiversolutions.info, on iHeartRadio, and on 6 local South Florida radio stations. Happy New Year, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful 2023. Until next time, take care. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.